Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back to the All in My Head podcast. I am Jenny and I am your host. And you have landed here today for season 3. And this is episode 34. And the title of this episode is The Journey Back to What My Soul Could Hear with Nikki Lane. And let me tell you a little bit about Nikki. Nikki Lane is a real estate professional, teacher at heart, and devoted student of what it means to live in alignment with one's inner voice. As co-founder of Tulane's team at Innovative Real Estate in South Carolina, she blends data-driven strategy with intuition, compassion, and a deep respect for the emotional layers of every life transition. A certified yoga instructor and lifelong student of philosophy and spiritual practice, Nikki is passionate about the journey back to clarity, learning to quiet the noise, listen deeply, and build a life that reflects what the soul can truly hear. And that could not be a more perfect and fitting way to introduce Nikki. I met her personally when she became my realtor. I interviewed quite a few people, and the second she landed in my home and sat at the table with me, I felt the vibe, I felt the connection, and she has since become a good friend. And that's just who she is in her heart. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Jenny. And I feel the same way. That definitely was a moment when we connected. And then we found out we were part of a bigger circle that we didn't even realize.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what happens here in Myrtle Beach. You find out that you've been connected with someone in a way that you didn't even know. And it's been great to kind of build this community here as I'm going into what's going to be our 7th year here, which is kind of crazy already to say that. But, we have a lot of things in common, and a love of coffee is one of those things.
Indeed.
Indeed, we quite often will meet and plan a meeting around coffee and food because it's two things that we love. So recently, we just had coffee at a wonderful little spot called Be Known, and we discussed many topics because we have been trying to figure this. How are we going to get a podcast episode together for a while? Am I right?
We have, and we both stayed quite busy, but we are using the word steady now. And but we've made it happen right in between your birthday and my birthday. I just turned 50 2 days ago, and you're about to have a birthday in 2 days.
Welcome to the club. The 50 Club is the best. Yes. So another thing that we have in common, we are both February birthdays, which is, I don't know, to me, that's the best birthday month. I don't care what anybody says. We are living our best lives here in February and in our 50s. We try to plan these lovely little outings, and we just had coffee together, and we've been thinking for a long time that our podcast episode was probably going to be something a little bit different. And when we sat down and started talking, we kind of just knew that this was the shift and the transition that we're both kind of in different ways. But, as I was thinking, what could this title be? And I sat with it and I opened up my notebook of notes. And the first thing I saw was this statement, this kind of a moment that you said, the journey back to what my soul could hear. And we were in the midst of a conversation, and I said, that's the title. And I was so glad when I texted you and you said, oh, yeah, that's definitely what it is. So, what did you mean when you said that you are on this journey back to what your soul could hear?
That is a great question. Adam, actually, my husband, when I told him about the title of the podcast, he said, "What does that even mean? That's so cryptic."
It is. And see, that's where we get each other. Like, we definitely say cryptic things, but we know what it means and we know it's unfolding.
And I said, well, in a nutshell, it's primarily about the agency of my life, the prism of me, and my journey from religion to relationship. And he said, uh huh. And I said, so yes, we're talking about, how that I grew up with rules and regulations and how God was big and scary. And I thought he was ready to hit me on the head with a hammer every time I stepped out of line. But that internally I had experienced something that told me it was a very different, that it was not that. And,
Right.
I kept following that lead until I got back to what resonated with my soul, what was deeply singing within every fiber of my being. And I just kept following that siren song, so to
Hmm.
speak, to what my soul was hearing. And now here I am living that in the agency of my life.
Right, and it's so interesting. We've talked about spirituality and, you know, um, religion. And, I've been on this journey myself. I similarly grew up in this, church and in this religion that was very strict and it was very scary. And, I talked about it in season one and, Jesus, Buddha, and crystals, and how for me, growing up, I wasn't asked, allowed to ask those questions of what that looked like and why. A question why was just like, there is no why, it's faith, the end. And it was very scary. And even in talking with Larissa on the death episode, death was even scary. So there was so much that I was unfolding and unpacking as an adult, in the midst of trying to raise kids. I didn't have the answers. I didn't have, um, the guts to kind of question things and unpack those things. So for me, spirituality started to unfold and look differently in my 40s, where I was kind of like, well, wait a minute, there's so many things out here. Why are we, pigeonholing ourselves to this one thing and making it scary? I can't believe that there's a God or, whoever in this universe that wants us to be scared and wants us to, unfold and unpack our life in a faith way, but fear-based. So again, similarly, I started just looking at all aspects and looking at people in a different way. Like, it opened my eyes in a very different way. And I
I,
know that happened for you as well.
it did, absolutely. And I think we're not alone. There's probably a ton of people who will listen to this and say, yes, I understand this. I get it. Growing up, religion was really about doctrine and rules
Mhm.
and structure and containment. And that never felt natural to me.
Mm.
And so I wanted to explore. I was always quite curious, but I wasn't afforded that opportunity, as you
Right.
just alluded to. And I had an experience very early on at the age of 8 that sort of shaped where I am now, because it brought this great remembering. I won't even say knowing, because
Mhm.
it was just something that I was like, "Oh, yes, this is real. I know this. I've experienced this. This resonates deeply with me." And it was one of those experiences that no one will ever be able to change my mind. I don't care
Mhm.
how ridiculous they think it sounds or how extraordinary they feel it is or dramatic. You could never in a million years of 10 thousands of lifetimes convince me that what I experienced wasn't authentic and true. And it was just a private moment, in a church, in fact, where at 8 years old, I had a very, very deep experience with what I believed to be God, the
Mhm.
great source, the universe, the creator. And it was so incredible that it didn't need a name, it didn't need a
Mhm.
face, it was all pervading and it permeated every fiber of my being. And it was all love.
Right.
There was no fear, there was no condemnation, and it wasn't contained, it was vast. I couldn't feel or sense the end of it.
Mhm.
It was just, I can't even, there are no words to
Right.
describe what I experienced. And that stayed with me, as this sort of seed inside that never went away, even though I spent my entire teenage years and young adult life still trying to conform.
Mhm.
to be that person that everyone in my realm at the time was not only expecting but demanding that I be. And it just felt so uncomfortable. It felt so wrong for me, but I didn't have any experiences outside of that to be able to reach to or connect with people who said, "Oh, well, there is this. It's different." I just
Right.
knew there was something different.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. I think, when you grow up in a very strict upbringing and a strict religious upbringing, there is this trauma behind it. And it's always this, this is what faith looks like and this is what it feels like. We just never felt like that was the case, that it was just one way. And, we spoke about that a lot with our kids growing up, is like, maybe this is the church we're going to now, and maybe this is what we're involved in. But for you, as you grow as an adult, decide what's right for you. And there were plenty of moments where our kids, were out of the church and into different things. And I was just like, I don't care what it looks like for you. You can be Buddhist, you can be, whatever you want to be. I want you to find whatever faith looks like for you and be happy in it. Yes, this is how you were raised, but they were also raised Catholic, and then we were into a different Christianity later on in our lives and in their upbringing. So for me, I always had that question, and that was something I wasn't allowed to question. Why, what about, other faiths, and what about other ways of expressing your spirituality? And why is that wrong? And why are we, shaming people in it?
Absolutely. And I mean, what we're really talking about is agency. In my
Mhm.
line of work, what I do as a real estate professional is the number one goal is to have agency, to have a client, to have
Mhm.
them allow me to be their advocate, their guide, to negotiate, to speak truth to them, to be a gatekeeper, all of those things. My goal as a real estate agent is to promote, protect, and preserve the highest and best interest of our clients. However, in life, many of us just give away our agency.
Mm.
We do not promote, protect, and preserve our own highest and best interest.
Mhm.
And, I get it. As children, we're beholden to what our parents are giving us. We don't
Right.
have agency. We don't even have enough knowledge or experience to have agency. But as we move into young adulthood, we start to sow our oats, as the people say, and
Mhm.
experience things that say, "Oh, this might not be the path for me. Maybe this is the path." And as even a young adult, I continued to be a part of the church, and I ended up going to seminary, and I became a women's pastor, and I led worship in a non-denominational church.
Mhm.
And I did so in a way that felt as authentic to me as I could, because I also didn't want to offend others.
Right.
That's the other thing about that experience is I realized in that experience at that young age that it was all encompassing,
Mhm.
and it accepted everyone exactly where they were, exactly how they were. And so I've always been careful, even in my journey of what I call religion to relationship,
Mhm.
to never judge anyone else for where they're at, because I came out of the church. I also used to go to Matthew 7 and say, "Judge not that ye be not
Mm.
judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall also be judged again," and used it in an angry way
Mhm.
because that's what I knew. So I
Right.
don't judge people for where they're at. I have friends who are very, very involved in their church.
Mhm.
And I think it's great because that's their path. I really now as a 50-year-old, and certainly when I came into knowing more when I was around 35, and really tapping into what I call spirituality now,
Mhm.
which is really relationship. Um, I don't get into a place where I judge anybody else, because one thing that taught me is that the paths change.
Right.
You may have to walk this path for a while until you're ready to receive the other path.
Exactly.
And what is so interesting now is that if you'd asked me 15 years ago if I'd be back in the church, I'd be like, no,
No.
that's not happening.
Right.
Let me tell you about the church and all the things I don't like about the church
Exactly.
and why I don't want to be at the church. But I matured even in that. I matured in my relationship. I matured in my spirituality
Right.
to the point that I was like, you know what? There are many paths. And I heard the song by Trevor Hall, whom I
Mhm.
adore, and the song says there are many roads and paths that lead to you. Some say they're false, but I believe all of them are true. And that is really my heart song. That is what I believe. If someone asked me, what do you believe? I said, I believe whatever path is right for you is the path that you're on right now. And I honor that path and I
Right.
respect that path.
Right. And I think that's just humanity, right? I think as we get older, I personally always felt judged in a way. I was raised in Catholic schools, and my parents did what they knew and were doing what they felt was best for us. So I don't judge that in any way. I absolutely don't. Um, but also, as a Latina Puerto Rican woman growing up in a very predominantly white neighborhood and in a predominantly white school system, um, I was judged so harshly on my looks, on, the way I talked, on the way I walked, on, everything. And even including, you know, our religion, there was a clear line. Like, you were here, but you really don't belong at the same time. So for me, that was something that, as I was raising my kids, I was very clear on, like, we don't judge anyone. Like, I don't care. And it was hard sometimes when you had a pastor or, or a priest saying specific things, and then to kind of be able to go home and unpack that. I was grateful that my kids grew up very differently, and they didn't go to Catholic schools, and they were, in the public school, and they were around the melting pot of people that we really did have in our community. I feel like easier to discuss that with them. And we were just more open, like,
Yes.
this is an open discussion to have. We're not saying this is the only way and everybody else is wrong because they think differently.
And it is that way in the West. We grow up with this containment,
Mhm.
and thankfully now I do feel that we're in an age where things are much more open.
Mhm.
People are more accepting of others and less judgmental. But for those who are still on the path that is strict, that is their path for now,
Mhm.
and that's okay. I
Mhm.
Like I said before, I didn't ever think there'd be a time where I'd say I'm back in church, but
Right.
hey, newsflash, Nikki's back in church. But
Right.
sitting back in this church for me has been very different than any other time
Mhm.
because I sit in that service looking through a different lens now. I look through the lens in all the experiences that I have had previously,
Mhm.
which used to make me angry sitting in church, right?
Right.
But now I look through them with a lens of acceptance, and I kind of treat it like a buffet. And this won't land well with everybody, but I do. I go, and what resonates with me, I take it, let it edify me and build me
Right.
up. And what didn't land with me, I don't get mad about it. I don't judge it because it probably landed with someone else.
That's right.
And I go to the buffet. I might not eat the fried food. I might eat the baked food. So
Right.
it's
Or vice
fine.
versa,
Right? Yeah, yeah. Or dep depending on the day.
depending on the day.
But it's been a really cool experience. Adam and I have been going back to a church, and I sit there, and I'm sure if someone were to look over my shoulder and read my notes, because I'm definitely, as you said, a teacher at heart, which makes me a great student. I take lots of
Yeah.
notes. And if they were to peer over, they'd be like, "What? He didn't say any of that. What is she talking about?" Because my
Exactly.
notes are like very yoga leaning. He may
Right.
say something that says, um, that's very, very Bible-ish or very, very
Mhm.
Christian-y, and I completely look at it through a lens of yoga and like, oh
That's
yeah,
right.
he's talking about this, our gunas, or our
Yeah.
kleshas, or what is our dristi, or so it's been wildly empowering to sit in the church with that sense of agency that it's okay for me to be here.
Right.
Not being afraid of people discovering that if they come to my home, there'll be a Buddha,
Right.
maybe a Ganesha, a picture of Jesus, a picture of Maharaji, incense, tons of different versions of Bibles alongside the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Like, it's
Right.
very eclectic in our house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing is where, as we both have grown older and have opened our minds and ourselves up to um, relationships and educating ourselves in different areas. I do the same thing, and I don't necessarily pick up and go to a church every Sunday. Still, I have done it online for quite a few years, and it's not for me right now at this stage. Um, I'm still unpacking things in a different way. And so I don't necessarily drop in every Sunday. I drop in when it feels like I need to. But also similarly, I'm sitting here taking notes of things, and I'm like, would look at it and go, I don't know what she was listening to that day. We've talked about this. Music is a huge part of it for me. So if that whole service was the music and that's all I took from it, that would be perfect for me. I definitely relate to music and we feel lyrics in a very specific way. My youngest son is the same way. He resonates with music and lyrics in a big way. And so yeah, I take what I need from it. And I've been following this person, and you may know her, Lee. And she's a tarot reader and does, kind of cool things here locally. And I just thought of that when you said, like, I take what I need. She'll say, take what you need. And if it's not meant for you, then let it go, baby. And I'm like, that's exactly how I drop into whatever I'm doing in the spiritual world.
And it takes a while to be able
Mhm.
to um, be okay with the fact that you know that not everybody is going to get where you are. Adam always says, my baby girl is my majestically awkward unicorn, and I
Yes.
gladly accept that title.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I I was talking to my granddaughter yesterday and I said, she went to the zoo. They had the day off and her brother and her mom and friends went to the zoo. And she was saying, I said, "What was your favorite part?" And she said, "The authors." And I was like Lala? Like an author? And I go, "I think you mean an otter, honey." And she was like, "Yes, that's what I meant. They're so cute." And I was like, I think that's my spirit animal. And clearly she's 6 and she believed that I had an animal at this point when I said, they carry a snack and their favorite rock. And that's me. Like, go in my purse and there's always a snack and there's always my favorite rock, or it might be something that I picked up, or it's a gem, or it's a crystal, but I'm always carrying those two things. So I said, that's my spirit animal. And she looked at my son and said, I didn't know Lala had an otter. You didn't tell me that. And I said, we're going to unpack that on another day because you're 6 and you're not understanding what spirit animal is. I wish I had an otter running around my home. I always related to the strangest things. And I feel like that was something that I never fit in. I was like the awkward kind of weirdo, but trying to conform in this box and in this package that we are told is how you're supposed to, you know, proceed in life. My husband too, Dan, as well, says all the time, he's like, yeah, just let your freak flag fly. You are like the weirdo and you are embracing it and you are loving it and you want to go bark at the moon and sit in the woods with your friends, go for it. And that's to me what, communing and relationship and spirituality is. It's whatever feels good in my soul at that
I,
time.
I love that 100%. And, one of the reasons that we even started going back to church is that we were looking for a little bit more of community. And, in the physical realm where we
Right.
go and we meet with people, especially locally, I would imagine in bigger cities you might have
Hmm.
more of it, but locally we don't really have a lot of community. We
Hmm.
do have like the Sacred Sister Circle and things
Right.
like that, but as far as like a regular gathering where you can go with like-minded people and, be in communion together for a set period of time, which I think is so impactful. No matter, even
Hmm.
if you're just going to a music concert, like
Sure.
I can go to a concert, be watching Chris Stapleton or whomever it is, and I'm the weirdo that's crying because the energy of everyone there is so intense
Yes.
and so joyful that
Oh, yes.
it just overwhelms me.
Absolutely.
And so I was really looking for that, and Adam was too, a place where we could just go and plug in and be with those people. And there's just not a lot of places. I mean,
Right.
up the road a bit, there's a Buddhist temple.
Hmm.
There's a place down on the south end of our area where
Hmm.
they called Unity, where people gather. But we couldn't find anything close enough that we
Right.
knew we would get up and go to it on a regular basis. And so we
Exactly.
started seeking out a church where we could sort of just blend in the background, big enough that we didn't have to make ourselves known, but small
Hmm.
enough that if we did want to, we could. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of what led us back to church
Yeah.
and getting into that area of being in community with people where we not only could show up for ourselves, but show up for others. And I
Right.
said to Adam, I know that once we plug in here, if we plug in here, I will find my people because they're
Right.
in here. And
Right.
lo and behold, we walk out of church that day and there's a beautiful young lady in front of me and she's walking and she's got dreadlocks. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, her dreads are so beautiful. And Adam's like, well, go get you some, baby. And I'm like, I don't know if 50 is the time for me to start experiencing with dreads. I just don't know about that.
Right. Right.
But I said it loud enough that she heard me, and she turns around and she says, oh, yeah, so and so does them. I'm like, I know her. And of course, it's some of the people in our goddess
Right.
sister circle.
Right.
And then I'm like, see, my people are in here
That's
in
right.
this church,
That's right.
taking community and taking from the buffet what they want. And people are accepting us. And it was like a little moment for me of like,
Hmm.
this is a good place for me to be right now. Will we be
Hmm.
there forever? I don't know.
Right.
But that's where we are right now. And we're
Right.
enjoying it. We're enjoying this again, like another leg on that journey back to what my soul can hear, because
Right.
when I'm in there, it's resonating deeply with me and it feels familiar,
Hmm.
but I'm not constrained by things that they sometimes say from the pulpit that I don't agree with. I don't
Exactly.
need you to tell me I'm going to burn in a gnashing pit of fire.
Exactly.
You know, but that's okay if somebody
Right.
else does need that to keep them out of addiction or out of the trenches or keep their life together. If that's what can hold their life together
Right.
and that's what they need to hear right now, that is perfectly fine. And I don't judge the pastor for saying it.
Absolutely. No, because everyone needs something different and everyone's going there for a different reason and a different purpose. And, we all just need to honor that. But I was interesting when you said, like you can go to a concert and feel that same sense of like spirituality come through you, or it hits you in a specific way. And we went, we last year went to see Mariah Faith, and she sang I can't make you love me. That song has taken me on a journey in so many different ways. But, I was just sitting there and tears were just streaming down my face. And, it connected in a different way for me. And that's similar. Like when I do drop into church and I am listening to some of these, I just know when I'm supposed to show up and what message is supposed to hit me at that moment in time. And yeah, I think that's another way of, communing in a spiritual way is through music. Um, but
I'm a
yes.
huge music fan. You
Oh,
know
yeah.
this. I
Oh, yeah.
sing.
Yeah. We need to get out there and do it. And we need to get you out there performing more. That's on the menu.
Is it on the menu?
It's on the
Well,
menu because you're
I
in 50
perform
now.
I perform in Casa de Lane all the time.
Yes. Speaking on that, was there a moment, or was it just the culmination of moments? When you realized that you kind of drifted away from this spirituality um self.
Yeah, I went through a really tough period back around 2010, and I was in the church at the time. I was coming out of a marriage that was horrific, and I pulled away from everything, and I just went to work, and I came home, and I
Mhm.
pretty much created a sabbatical for myself. And in that time, music, of course, was one of my go tos. It was my way to express what I was feeling. So I had a keyboard and I would play and I would just sit down and sing whatever came out of my heart and
Mhm.
soul because there was nobody, it was just me.
Right.
And I also needed to move my body. I just felt like I was stagnant in so many ways. I had been trapped for several years in a horrific situation. And when I got out of it and decided to just quiet my mind and soul, it really looked like not doing much with anybody. And I created a sanctuary in my house. People would come over, some close friends, and they'd be like, "It is so peaceful in here." I'm like, "Yes,
Mm.
because I have lived in not peace for many years
Right.
and I need this in my life." And during that time when I felt also stagnant in my body, I wanted to exercise, but I have some health conditions that can sometimes make that difficult.
Mhm.
And I had this app that I had downloaded, and I happened upon a meditation and a yoga exercise in it. And everything that I knew about meditation and yoga was taboo from the way that I grew
Right.
up. Don't you dare do those poses, they honor idols.
Mhm.
And so I did it. And when I was doing the poses, and I had no clue at the time what I was doing, I probably looked a hot mess, but I
I
was
still
just
look a
doing
hot mess when I'm doing it.
it. I was just doing it in my home, and I was connecting to something so beautiful inside of myself, and so still, and so peaceful, and so vast, and so full of love.
Mm.
And it was a reminiscent feeling of that experience I had when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, this is something. And I just kept doing it. And then I made an even bigger move and moved from that place I was living in down to the beach. And shortly after I got here, a yoga studio was offering free classes so their new teachers could train.
Mm.
And I went through that door of Shanti Yoga Studio. And as soon as I did, I was home.
You knew.
I was home and the class hadn't even started. Nothing had happened, but
Right.
that feeling of being
Right.
at the concert with the tears swelling up in your
Right.
eyes, I was just like, oh, this is something. And I rolled my mat out and they did some chanting in a language I didn't understand.
Mhm.
And they had pictures on the wall of people that clearly were from a different country and pictures of all these different types of things that I didn't know what they were. And they were Um, now that I know what it is, they were doing the Maha Mrityunjaya, and we did the poses. And throughout the entire pose, the teacher was dropping these little nuggets of philosophy.
Mm.
And my heart was expanding like the thousand petaled lotus. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
And I left and I was like, I have to come back. And so I
Mhm.
bought a pass and I kept showing up. And eventually I took teacher training. And I learned so much, and I was really not there to learn to teach, I
Right.
was there to learn the philosophy, and that opened up a whole other realm of things for me, and that was probably my first step into spirituality.
Mm.
And I was admittedly afraid still, some from the ingraining I had from the church. I would go to these private sessions and there would be like a statue of Shiva. And I'd be like, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to see that.
Right.
But in my own private time, I would explore and try to learn and be open to it. And I began to read the autobiography of a yogi and Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad and the Ramayana. And something became glaringly obvious to me as I read, because all these sacred texts spoke about Jesus
Right.
and how he died the real death and he was the ultimate sacrifice. But then I noticed this glaring difference between what I grew up with and that was that my sacred text that I grew up with, the Bible, at least the version that I had, because there are many, many, many
Right.
versions, um, excluded everybody. But all these other sacred texts included everybody and specifically included Jesus. And
Right.
that broke my heart in a sad way, but also in a brilliant way.
Right.
And it was a recognizing of truth for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to see this prism of me and all the colors that reflected as these different lights hit it. And it was like this opening of truth. And I was like, this is my truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is my path. This is my great unveiling and revelation. And this is what I know God to be. And that it is this, that God has many names and God has many faces.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many paths which lead to God, whether you call it source, divine, universe, Mother Earth. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It is one. And that's a truth that is unbreakable in me. And that was how I landed in this practice of yoga that has really become the path of bhakti for me,
Mm-hmm.
the yoga of devotion. I do the asanas, I do the poses,
Mm-hmm.
not as often as I used to, but I still do them. But for me, it is the philosophy and this just undeniable love and acceptance of all beings
Right.
everywhere. There is a saying, Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free.
Mm-hmm.
And may my thoughts, words, and actions in some way contribute to the happiness and freedom of all. And that is how I try to live my life. I heard Krishna Das say, I love Krishna Das. I love the chanting. I love the harmonium.
Mm-hmm.
I love his talks. But he said once that Maharaji said to them and to him and Ram Dass, love everyone, serve everyone, and remember God. And that has really become my life's mantra is I try to love everyone just as they are, wherever they are, and serve them in some way, which does not include giving away my agency,
Right.
and to remember God in my way and to respect the way that everyone else remembers God.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good and so beautiful. And, that has resonated with me. When we met, I had told you that I had kind of put up that yoga mat for a little while. I, it was just a very weird. And when I look back at it, I was like, what a weird way to protest, something that just was related to yoga. What was it doing for me other than like now I'm not moving my body in this specific way that I need, right? Because I also, have an injury that doesn't allow me to do the exercising in the way that I was very used to doing, strenuous and hard. And I needed that for release. But then I put this, yoga mat away and I was like, I'm not doing that because of this. And, and I just recently brought it out and I said it's been baby steps since we met for coffee a couple weeks ago because it's been like, all right, the yoga mat was out. At least it was out now. And I necessarily didn't get on it. And then it was probably just a couple days ago that I was like, I need to get on there. I need it for my brain. I need it for my body. I know what it's asking for. So, get over yourself, get out of your head again in whatever you're protesting and get on there. And it was brief, but it was poignant and powerful at the same time. And I was like, this is what it's about, right? This is this kind of coming back to yourself and coming home, like you said. You have said multiple times when we met that day, but also in this conversation, the prism of me. And I know when we met, you were like, I got to unpack that. Talk about what the prism of me has meant to you, and maybe it's still unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. When I said that, I wrote it down. You know how sometimes you just say it and you're like, I don't even know where that came from, but I need to
Yeah.
explore that. So
Yep.
I did. I got into my journaling. I journal a lot, and writing and music are my ways, my mediums of getting things in and out. And I thought, well, what was I talking about then? The prism of me, and it really came back to that agency, and understanding, the various versions of me that are out there, like all the stories we tell ourselves, and it covers us up, and I think dims our light because we just start to believe what we tell ourselves. We literally create neural pathways
Right.
and keep carving them deeper and deeper and deeper. And I just turned 50, and for some reason, it really kind of hit home with me. Both of my parents are gone now. They've dropped the bodies and or wherever they are and
Mm-hmm.
however they are now. And they passed this life young, like
Right.
60 in their mid 60s. And so when I hit 50, I was like, whoa, Nikki might only have 15 years left in this body,
Mm-hmm.
which is its own realization, right? Um, but I also started thinking about how my mom particularly, and my grandmother, when they got on up in age, and this is going to resonate with a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
women as we age, and I think also men, but women as we age start to get a little more outspoken about how we feel and stop, what is that thing that's wild right now on the Instagram, the We Do Not Care Club?
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. We
like
don't care.
we don't care.
I
We
don't
don't
care.
care
I say
anymore,
that so often. I don't care.
But I thought about, how that they, as they had aged, they started to preserve, protect, and promote their own interest. And not in a
Right.
selfish way, right? Not being like, I don't care about you, I'm doing
No.
what's best for me. But more sort of in that, crone era, that wisdom sage era of,
Right.
I'm going to take care of self. I'm going to honor what my soul has been telling me all these decades.
Right.
And so I started looking at that and thinking about that and just noticing how all the things I've been through in my life, and listen, lifetime would pay for the rights to my story,
I'm
from
serious.
childhood
Yes.
forward. There's a lot to unpack. There are
Mm-hmm.
not enough episodes in the podcasts, but
Maybe we'll do 1 or 2 a year, and we'll
yeah.
get there in 12 years.
Absolutely. But I've been through some things.
Mhm.
Everybody's been through some things, but
Right.
I've been through some deeply traumatic things, some really eye-opening things, some things that did scar me in a way and cause traumas that
Right.
made me be a certain way.
Mhm.
But as I've approached the different religions and spiritualities, the light from those have hit me in different ways
Right.
and caused a refraction of light that was a different color. You
Right.
think about light passing through a prism and how the colors change, the rainbow
Mhm.
of colors. And I think about that light shining on the prism of me
Mm.
as being source divine, God, at different stages of this journey,
Right.
and how at different stages of this journey that light has been a different color,
Yeah.
and some of it quite bright and brilliant, and some a little darker, and some a little more moody. And just seeing the prism of me and accepting it
Mhm.
and knowing that it was okay for wherever I was at on that journey,
Mhm.
and being able to have selfness, not
Mhm.
selfishness,
Right.
but selfness,
Yeah, being
honoring self.
self-full, right? Like, pouring into yourself is important.
Mhm. And yoga says that, I think it was Patanjali that said yoga is the journey of the self,
Mhm.
through the self, to the self.
Right.
And that's really what my journey has been about. I think everybody's journey is that way, even if they don't necessarily put those words to it. We're always
Right.
trying to get through what we were taught,
Mhm.
through what we've experienced, to what we really are,
Right.
is another way to put it.
Sure, and not seeing ourselves as one-sided, right? If I couldn't really put it into words when we were at the coffee shop either, but I just thought, like, what a beautiful analogy, right? The prism of me, right? The beautiful reflections of light. Yesterday when I was teaching this class, and this is all primarily people that are over 50, some are in their 80s. This is just like, it's morning pages, evening thoughts, and we're kind of unpacking the gratitude, like finding gratitude even in the hardest moments. And it's been so beautiful to watch these people open up, and it's a small group. There's probably 6 or 7 in it, and watching them be vulnerable, especially like, in their 70s and 80s, and doing something that they've never done before. Journaling is new to them. gratitude practice is new to them. We've talked about meditation, but also we did an in-class practice where we looked at, like both and writing, right? You can be in a place of struggle and heaviness, and you can also find the gratitude in it. So changing that word but, to and, right? The two live simultaneously together.
Love
um
that.
and it was so good. They wrote for 5 minutes or so, and then sharing that first week, nobody wanted to share stuff, right? So I was sharing mostly my writings and what came to me in these practices. But yesterday, wow, like they just opened up in the most beautiful way. And this one woman said, I was looking at the situation with my child who's grown and how hard it's been, and judging myself as a mother that I created this and I can't fix it, right? But she's like, but I was looking at it, now I'm looking at it completely differently. It was like almost permission to say, that's not my thing to carry, and I've done what I can for her. That doesn't negate all the things that I've done and that I'm still here for her, but I can't fix it. And that's okay. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of saying, but if I do this and if I try this. And that was literally what I said to them with my poetry book, which will be out this year. Um, it is about trauma, and it is about resilience, and it is about that journey from here to where I am now and where I'm continuing to grow and go. I wouldn't be that person. So I could sit in that space of woe is me, and I did. There were plenty of dark days and plenty of dark moments, and I could sit in that, or I could say, wait a second, this is what helped me. Journaling, poetry, writing helped me, and that's how I saved myself, right? In my journey of, okay, I could be here or I could grow here, and what helped me throughout. So for them, they're like, wow, journaling is going to change my everyday thinking. I wanted to call everybody yesterday on my ride home and just say, oh my gosh, this was the most beautiful hour and 15 minutes I think I've had in the longest time, because we were all in this community together, and everyone was learning something, and I was learning something, and I was just in it. Yeah, we're older. Things look different for us, but now we are taking care of ourselves. And what does that look like? And how can we move forward in that? So the prism of me was like mind blowing right now again.
I love it. Well, and I think we're always trying to get back to our natural state,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we know what that prism is, the state. We understand on some aspect that the way that the experiences we go
Mm-hmm.
through hit that prism, things change. And we're talking about journaling and how cathartic that can be, and also revelatory, because it does allow us to say some things that we wouldn't necessarily say out loud.
Right.
I was going to talk to about this, but I'm actually going to read it straight from my journal
Love.
because it comes right in. So, I found yoga when I was searching for a way out of religion and into relationship. I was discarding experiences and trying to deeply connect with divine. The pervading natural state has always been very apparent to me. In many ways, I have tried and sought to create that inner natural state externally. Because I had what I now believe to be a momentary samadhi at the age of 8, I've been chasing it since then.
Hmm.
It eluded me because I did not understand it was not something to get, it was something I was. I am. I don't think I could have expressed that vocally, because I would have been talking about it and also processing it in my head and
Right.
reframing and rephrasing it. But when
Correct.
I wrote that, that was profound. I mean, not tooting a horn, right? But I'm just saying,
Right.
like, that is
Right.
the writing of that was very different than how I would have spoken it. But that, I think, is what we're all doing. We're chasing this natural state, trying to
Mm-hmm.
discard the experiences to connect with something in us that is saying, this is the way you are
Right.
right here. I always, so I had a yoga studio for a while. I obviously did become a yoga instructor, and I had a yoga studio
Hmm.
prior to COVID. COVID ended up bringing me to an end because I couldn't teach online.
Right.
Um, and I would tell the students all the time, they would bring their mat, some of them, like you were talking about,
Hmm.
and some of them did no poses. I said,
Right.
it is perfectly fine to just sit and be. Some of them would lay down, some of them would
Right.
go to sleep. That's
Right.
fine too. But I would say to them, you are perfect, whole, and complete without want and without need at the
Right.
center of your being.
Right.
And the reason we are here today is to try to, in some way, connect with that space, with
Hmm.
that self, even if just for one single solitary
Right.
moment.
Right. And that's the thing. I even said this yesterday, right? We are our worst enemies. We judge ourselves, and we are so judgmental of ourselves first, and it has to look this way, and it has to feel this way. And that's something, like, every time I open the practice of this journaling in this class and the writing, I say, you're writing without judgment. One woman was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, I'm not a writer. I'm like, this is not about writing, this is about journaling. This isn't, there's no right or wrong. You don't, she's like, is it positive, is it negative, what am I writing? And I'm like, you're writing whatever feels like it needs to come out in this moment. And you're doing it in a non-judgmental way, even in the, and both, right? Both and writing. It's not about judging. It's about, this is how I feel. I honor that. And at the same time, I'm feeling gratitude for the smallest thing. So yeah, we are our worst judges. And if you just get on the mat or whatever you're doing and just lay there, you've shown up for yourself in whatever way you need to.
Yeah, taking a moment back to what your soul can hear, whether it's through music, whether
Yes.
it's through writing, whether it's through community,
Mhm.
on a in a drum circle on the beach, whether it's through reading sacred text, whether it's through showing up at church, however you can connect back to what you know is still at the center of your being.
Mhm.
That's connecting back to what your soul can hear, and
Right.
that's what, that was, I was talking about specific experiences, but really and truly, that statement was all encompassing for all beings everywhere, just as they are. Back to the journey, taking the journey back to what our soul can hear. What is that for you? To the listeners today, I hope that some of these words are landing in that soft, fertile ground, because if you're here, you were meant to hear these things, and that it's landing in that soft, fertile ground so that it can blossom. And you just have to find your way, right? You
Right.
just have to keep coming back to yourself, coming back to home, unpacking the stories, unraveling those threads. And if we can spend more and more time in that space, our whole existence would change. I mean, can you just imagine if, I know there are countries out there where they
Mhm.
mandate for you to do things, and
Right.
our country obviously mandates to do things here. We got to pay the taxes, we got to pay the
Right.
man, we got to do the things.
Right.
But can you just imagine, like, I think this is why people go into like homesteading and wanting to have a
Mhm.
compound. They just want to be in that space all the time.
Right.
It's hard. We got to live life. I'm not going to be an ascetic and a sage walking around with ash on my face and giving up all my belongings. I
Right.
live in this day and this time in this body. But it doesn't mean I can't create that space and journey home every single time I get an opportunity. Create that sanctuary in my home, create that community around me, and show up, and not showing up just for myself, but showing up for other people, so that
Right.
what I do benefits them, for the ones who can't figure out a way to show up for themselves yet.
Right. And I think that that's, so important that we honor that, and we honor what we need, and we honor what other people need, right? It's hard being a human. I say that all the time, right? It's I took this wonderful course through an online yoga and wellness center, and the woman said, "Oh, it's easy being, ethereal and in another realm, and they're living their best lives. We're out here doing human things, living the human existence, and it is hard." So whatever we can find for ourselves to help us through this journey and help others through this journey, and that's humanity. That's what we're
Mhm.
called to do. So, sometimes it gets frustrating, especially if you're online and you're seeing the ruckus and radical things that are happening and this it gets frustrating. And I think there's we can't fix everyone. That's not our job, but we can walk in a light and shine that light on others and help them in whatever way, uh whatever gift and we're able to offer to other
Mhm.
people. Like, that's what we need to do for each other.
Yeah. And listen, the human condition is suffering.
Oh.
We come into the world, we are born with screaming.
Mhm.
Our first sound in the world is screaming. And from
Right.
the day that we are born, we are dying.
Mhm.
And our whole journey here, no matter what path it takes or what title it puts on, our whole journey here is to find our way back to source.
Right.
And so, if we can find ways to eliminate our suffering, we certainly then benefit everyone else and help end their suffering. And it's really kind of poignant when you think about the fact that from the day that we're born, we're
Mm.
dying, but that is
Mhm.
literally the truth. And
Mhm.
what's that old saying about it's not the date on the headstone at the beginning and the end, it's the dash in between.
Mhm.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And what will we do with that time? And we all are selfish in our younger years and our
Mhm.
formative years because we're
Mhm.
trying to find our way.
Right.
But the hope is as we age, and I think certainly for me, when I got around 35, I felt the agency to explore.
Mm.
When I got into my mid to late 40s, I just decided to live that agency. And now, as I am now a half a century old, I can assure you as I move forward in life, I will not be creating waves that
Mhm.
disrupt other people's lives,
Right.
but I will surf the waves of my life,
That's right.
however they come to me. And I will live in a way that I feel is the way I'm supposed to
That's
live.
right.
And I know if I do that, it will honor where everybody else is. I don't have to worry about offending someone else or hurting them in some way or taking from them in some way because I will be walking in love. And
You have to please other people and you have to go out of your way in pleasing other people. And for me, that was doing me the greatest disservice. We all are dying every day. We get that. But I was killing myself and dying quicker um, because I was overextending myself and bending to everyone else's needs, but also in that being taken advantage of. And so when I say I don't care, again, it's not in a selfish way, but I don't care to walk in that way and live that life anymore because I know that I'm a good person even if I'm not bending to everyone else's needs. I'm actually a better person because I am seeing my worth and I am walking in my worth and purpose. And in that, I'm being able to kind of pour that out into other people. If you're not pouring into yourself, you're pouring from an empty cup. So how are we refilling ourselves if we're just giving and giving to people who are taking advantage of, right? So it again, yes, it's that walking in the best light possible, like you said, like riding the wave, and it may cause disruption to other people, but again, that's not my intention, and that's not for me to carry. Everyone's going to carry it in their own way, and I give that back to you.
Mhm. Well, in yoga, what do we say? We say namaste. I honor the light in me, honors the light in you.
Right.
And no matter where we're at in life, whatever junk we're covered up with, whatever stories we have going on at the time, the Leela of our life, we all have that light inside of us. Even
Mhm.
even what we would deem, if we sat in judgment of people and deemed the worst
Mhm.
of our society, people who harm children,
Right.
who commit horrendous acts, there's still light inside of them somewhere, some way. And that is where they're at. And eh, you have to give people space to be what they are and what they're
Mhm.
doing and what they're going through, but it doesn't mean that we have to condone it. It doesn't mean that
Right.
we have to promote it. But we can still see past all that to the light of who they are, and do something in our own being that will hopefully promote the light within them. And people probably look at us, we think we're shining bright, and we don't see our own dust, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right, and that's so funny, like, therapy has been huge for me, I'm not gonna lie, and I've said it a million times on the episodes, and I talk about it freely with my kids, and, sometimes that reflection back of kind of what you're feeling and seeing it differently is eye-opening, but, it's also I think I'm in such a better place to receive that, like, I don't take it as this harsh criticism, and, like, oh, I would have taken it so personally, and I'm like, I have to fix everything about myself and change everything because that's it. It's horrible. Like I don't look at things like that anymore. I take it for love that it is meant in when somebody says, "Well, this is what I'm seeing." I'm like, "Okay, let me reflect on that. Let me journal about it. Let me dive deeper," as opposed to like, "Oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end now because I must be a horrible person." Like I don't feel that way anymore. And that is liberating. You talked about how you want to show up for others. How do you want others to show up for you and honor your beliefs respectfully?
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating things for me is that space that, when I'm in my sanctuary and in my practice, and being edified by whatever I'm reading or listening to or the people I'm around, I could stay in that space forever,
Mhm.
right? Like if we could just live in that bubble, and I feel a sense of stillness and love in that space, and then you got to come out into the world and you got to deal with bobo heads, right? You know,
Right.
I'm a bobo head sometimes. Um, and you got to deal with life, and you got to deal with the circumstances around us, and the time that we live in, and
Right.
it then you're like, oh, where's that person who this morning was like, oh, lotus flowers and om and
Exactly.
love and all the things. So what I want for people is the same thing I want for myself.
Mhm.
I don't want to be put on a pedestal. I don't want to want people to think that I am something that I am not.
Right.
I want them to respect wherever I am at the time. And if where I am at the time doesn't rub them in a way that is good, or doesn't make them feel warm and fuzzy, for them to just respect that and
Mhm.
give me my space. And I mean, I think that's it. I want to be able to show up at that church we're going to and participate. And if I so choose to open my home to folks and they come in,
Mhm.
I don't want them to run out of the house and say, did you know she had a Ganesha or some kind of elephant head thing on her
Right.
counter? And then she had these crystal things. And I'm pretty sure I saw oracle cards on her bookshelf.
Mhm.
I don't want that. But
Right.
at the same time, Jenny, if that is what they leave with and that's what they say, I also do not care.
Right.
And I won't be mad at them for it. Do I
Right.
want them to not have to say something about it? No. But listen, sometimes I'm driving down the road
Right.
and somebody is driving like a maniac. And I'm like, what is your problem?
Right.
Jesus and the saints, get out of my way. We're not all
Right.
on vacation here. You know,
Exactly.
where is Miss Low Cost Samastasuki no Bobbin
Mhm.
to then? Right? So
Right.
I understand we're not gonna all be looking through our rose colored glasses every time and love everybody where they're at. And
Right.
that's okay. But in a perfect world, that's what I'd want. I'd want to just be like, oh, there's Nikki doing Nikki things, and we love Nikki and her Nikki things. I don't do Nikki things, but that's okay.
Right. Right. Exactly. Just I think that's the biggest message, in general for people. Like just honor people for who they are, meet them where they are and if it's not for you, that's fine. But like let's not pass judgment, right? Everyone
Mm.
is living their human existence in the way that is best for them, and we honor that, and we just would like the same
Mm.
reciprocally.
Well, and what does the Bible say? Be still and know that I'm God.
Mhm.
In seminary, I studied the Greek, Hebrew, Chaldean, Aramaic, all the original languages of the Bible to because I knew that these words have changed over
Mhm.
time, that they've passed through. I mean, there's the King James version,
Mhm.
literally King James's version of what he took from the Bible to make it work for him,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I knew that these things have changed over time, not unlike some of the yoga texts I have read.
Right.
There are different commentaries on it. So I felt it important to unpack these original words. But when we look at that word, be still, if we translated it today in our urban language, it's like, stop being
Mhm.
a nosy Nelly, stop being in everybody's business and tending to everybody's garden, and just let me be source to everyone.
Right.
You're not necessary for this to continue.
Right.
Be still and know that I'm God. Be quiet and be reverent and let people live their life.
Right.
I am the source. I am the universe. I am creator. Everything is from and arises out of source. That's how I take that and unpack it. And it's another golden rule, I believe. They say the
Mhm.
golden rule is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, but
Mhm.
be still and know that I am God also, I think, is a good golden rule to go by. Just, take your hands off of it. We don't have to manipulate and contain and control everything and
Right.
put our story on it. We can all read the same book and go to book club and we all saw something completely different in the main
Right.
character.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all up for individual interpretation, and again, it goes back to take what you need, and if it's not for you, let it go.
Let it
Um,
go.
is that would you say journaling, or what would you say is the practice that helps you most come back to yourself when life gets lifey? Life is lifing.
Life is life, and absolutely. I think journaling is a huge part of it.
Mhm.
Journaling also, for me, ends up being music. I will do vocal journaling, is
Mhm.
what I call it.
Yeah.
I will sit down at the keyboard and write, or my harmonium. I also have a ukulele, but I haven't played it as much. Maybe it's
Mhm.
on the list, right? But
Yeah.
I will sit down and write music. I will let my fingers play what my soul is hearing,
Mhm.
and I will let my mouth sing the words. There was a time when I was going through some great grief, and I can remember sitting down at the keyboard. Tears come now, even as I think about it. And I just cried and I wailed and I moaned as I
Mhm.
played because there were no words to write. There were no words to say. It was only the sound that could come out.
Right.
And the music that I was playing was in a minor key, and it was soul wrenching and cutting, but it was the feeling that had to come out, and there were no words for it. So sometimes the words are there and they can come out, and the journaling is helpful, but sometimes there aren't words that can come out, and it's just that sound that needs to come out.
Right. Right, and I'm not a singer in any way. I by no means. That doesn't mean I won't wail in the car.
And all sing good.
Right, we all can't be, Kelly Clarkson, but we can definitely, express our emotions in that way, and I think that that's the thing is, finding what works for you in expressing and, like, putting that out there.
Another way that I show up to unpack things or just be with myself and try to hear, and I think this probably resonates with a lot of people too, is I love to work with my plants inside. I'm cooking in love, right? I'm
Right.
I'm saying mantras, I am praying, I am singing, I'm creating more than food for
Mhm.
the stomach and the palate of the mouth. I'm creating something for the heart and the soul and cleaning. I used to practice my mantras when I was in teacher training. We had to learn these mantras in Sanskrit, and which was interesting because that's a language that came very naturally to me. So maybe sometime past I've been over there in a different
Right.
life, but I would clean, and as I was cleaning or filling the vitamin boxes for my
Mhm.
medicines every day, the mantra repetition, I would go through it. So those kind of things also are ways that you can connect. I think the listeners just have to figure out, what is it that lights up your heart? What
Right.
brings you joy when you do it? And that
Right.
is your thing. And your
Right.
thing might change over time. That's okay.
Absolutely. At different transitions in our lives, different things are what we need and what are pivotal in our lives. And I never look back and say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't done that as a job." I feel like every, season of my life was purposeful and kind of brought me to having the courage to do the things that I'm doing now in my life. And it yeah, it opened my voice in a different way that I didn't have the courage or even the know-how to do back then. Um, so yeah, I think people just need to find what's good for them. And I start every day in meditation. That's number one. I don't even get out of bed and lift my head until like I've meditated and kind of let go of the night, whatever was running around in my dreams or whatever the case may be, and start a day and kind of this mindfulness, but also just like coffee, like, speaking words into my coffee and taking in that quiet moment, and like you said, when you're cooking, you're speaking love into that food. And, that's what is going to nourish you and what you're taking in. So speaking and doing that in love. And that's for me is baking. I'm like that way when I just get in there and start messing around with baking or my sourdough or whatever. Yeah, it's love for me too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
And
love
it can
that.
be so heart opening and mind opening to think about the way that things come to you. I did this meditation for about 2 weeks where when I would get my coffee,
Hmm.
I would begin by thinking about how every piece of that experience came
Hmm.
to be,
Right.
from the land to the beans to the harvest to the packaging. And I would spend time as I was drinking that coffee, and I did it mindfully. I would smell it, I would taste it, I would think about every person that had a hand in bringing that cup to me
Right.
and that moment, and how it was so sacred that it arrived to me, and how I had obligation, and I use that lightly, an obligation to honor how that arrived to me.
Yes.
When you really sit down and you start to list out,
Right.
like I did it in my journal and was like, okay, the origin of this coffee. I
Hmm.
had like 10 pages of all the people and things and processes, down to the creative person who thought about how to package this and
That's
market
right.
this and made me want to buy it. And
Right.
just, you could go on one little single moment, you could go so deep into a moment of gratitude and honoring.
Yeah.
And when you come out of that and you realize what happened to make that moment, that will instinctly slow you down.
You can find gratitude and multiple layers of gratitude when you unpack something like that and say, whoa, look at everything that needed to happen and all the people that needed to come together for this simple thing of coffee. It was something that's, for me, even in a traumatic childhood and things that happened traumatically to me, that was something that always brought people together. It was such a communal moment. And you know, um, in my culture, in my family. It was just something that really brought people together. And it is when you saw people kind of settle and let their guard down in a beautiful way. It is when I say to someone, hey, let's meet for coffee, it is very much communal and more than just a cup of coffee, although the coffee is always delicious. But it's that gratitude of like, look at all the things that had to happen for us to just be here in this moment and sharing this together.
It becomes a ritual, a sacred
Yeah,
peace offering in a way.
absolutely.
One of the times that
Absolutely.
I think I'm hardest on myself is when I find or I realize I come back to my senses, right? And from wherever story I've been on in
Mhm.
Storyland, and I realize I've been ungrateful for something or I've been unthankful or I
Mhm.
took it for granted. And in our real estate, we often do a donation for every closing to a charity that feeds kids outside of school
Mhm.
because unbelievable that in this country we have children that are hungry, but here we are.
Mhm.
And that's near and dear to my heart because I grew up hungry. I grew up sharing food or perhaps watching my mom not take food so we could eat, or
Right.
perhaps being the oldest not taking food myself, or being fed by the church or the government so that we would have food when we did. And I developed sort of this relationship with food of I deserve
Mhm.
food now. I'm going
Mm.
to get food. I didn't have food and now I deserve food, and whatever food I want I can have whenever I want it, and if I
Right.
waste it I waste it. And it developed sort of this like ungrateful haughty attitude about
Mhm.
food. And I realized recently over the past 5 years that my relationship with food was not coming from a place of honor,
Mm.
and I still struggle with it. I still try to unpack that every day of choosing a different path with that, because I can just take it for granted and be
Right.
unthankful for it because I feel like I deserve it because I went
Mhm.
so long without it. But that's probably one of the places that I'm hardest on myself is just when I realize I'm complaining or judging because I truly do not want to be that person. That is the
Right.
one version of me, the one prism aspect of me, the color that comes out that I don't enjoy, that I don't like, that I don't prefer, that I don't want people to experience or see.
Right.
And we all have that shadow work. We all have that place in ourselves that we have to work on. And that's also part of going through the journey of what your soul can hear. Being courageous enough to see the parts of you that don't reflect and refract that light the way that it should.
Right. Is exactly what you said.
Hmm.
The not taking things for granted and not thinking, well, I earned this, I deserve it. Um, that's hard. That's hard when you went without.
Mhm, mhm. It is, it is, and, I mean, I think that is just our society in general that
Mhm.
you gotta when you earn it, and you deserve it, and you're
Right.
entitled to it, but truly, we don't deserve anything,
Mhm.
we don't earn anything. Things are just here, and we have the honor of participating in them, of being able to partake of them. We didn't create most of what's around us.
Right.
We just happen to benefit from it, but we don't
Right.
always see it that way. Life is fast and it's hurried and it's rushed.
Right.
And, we're not going to be sanctimonious and sit here and act like every day, I'm not like, oh, thank you for this wood that made this bed and this soft leather and the,
Right.
the animal that gave up its skin so that I could sit. Like, we're not doing that every day. But man, if we
Right.
can just take a couple of moments, at least a couple a week, to say, wow, I have this.
Right.
I don't deserve it. I didn't earn it.
Right.
I might have worked hard and paid for it with my money, but hey, how about the body that allowed me to work hard and the breath
That's
in the
right.
body? I certainly didn't earn that.
Right.
I have it and here I am having to use it and hopefully I use it well.
Right. Is that how your Monday musings came about? Because we
It
love them.
is. Oh, thank you. Thank
I
you.
love them. I speak
There
for the
is
collective we.
They're just as much for me as they are for anyone else. They are, I am a teacher at heart, and if I don't feel like I'm sharing something with someone that can benefit them, I always feel like a little void. It
Right.
fills my heart up and my soul to be able to share something. But here's the thing, I can't teach anything I haven't experienced. The
Yes.
If you sit in a classroom, the most daunting lesson to sit under and hear is from a teacher who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Oh, yes.
um So
Yes,
I
that
try to
is.
never teach something I haven't actually experienced or am experiencing.
Yes.
But those Monday musings arise out of journaling, out of something that resonates deeply with me during the week. And usually I try to tie it back to our business because our tagline for our business is two lanes, one focus, all heart. And we did that because that's how we try to live. I mean, we're not perfect, but we try to live that way. And Adam and I work together, we live together, and it's beautiful. Um, and I was doing Monday musings without sharing them to the masses. And I
Mhm.
thought, I can offer this. And so I did. I figured out a way that I could take it, in a short nugget, even if it was 10 pages in the journal,
Right.
bring it down to Instagram level
Exactly. Short and
and
sweet.
yes, and share it in a way that would perhaps start somebody's week off in a different mindset. And I always wrap it up with an invitation and then a reminder, and just tell the story. And usually it bends into also how it affects our business, how we go about that same learning in our business, and then inviting them to examine the story that they're in or the line that they're in, or
Right.
invite them into a practice and then remind them, we're all just walking each other home. There's no judgment here. We're just on this journey together. And hopefully it's in some way benefiting them. And it's interesting that you say speak for the collective.
Mhm.
um, we don't spend a lot of time looking at our social media analytics because I do it mostly out of necessity. If I'm being quite honest, it's painful
Seriously, I
sometimes.
understand. I understand that.
But it's probably one of the most widely commented on posts, and it also gets me the most private remarks
Right.
and stories. And people sometimes call or email or text me privately to tell me
Right.
how it affected them. And it's always nice to hear that, but
Mhm.
it just is a reminder to me that it is an important thing to do it right now. It's an important medium. Will it always be there? I don't know. Probably
Right.
not. But for now, and this
Right.
season where I am, it is the voice I've been given, and it's confirmed that people need to hear it and want to hear it, and including myself.
Right. You get these people who are like, "Oh, but they're a realtor. They're just about business." And that was the thing that I was trying to express in the beginning is I had more than one realtor come through. And it was the vibe of I absolutely, without a doubt, and my husband was like, "You're making the decision because I know you're going with your gut and you're better at that than me." Um, I just absolutely knew that you had my best interest at heart, but we were gonna connect in a different and more beautiful way. Like, it was yes, it's business, we get that, but it was also something else. Regardless of if you choose me or not, these are the things you wanna look out for, and these are the things that you wanna make sure, that feel good in your soul and in your gut. And that was it for me, interpersonal connection, that just touches you in a different way.
I One thing people who know me well know about me is, one, I'm terrible accepting gifts. I always get really embarrassed.
Mhm,
I'm not good at a humble brag,
mhm.
and I don't like to toot my own horn. But, in business, people rely on those reviews
That's
and the
right.
word of mouth. And so Adam does such a beautiful job of taking the reviews that people give us, and the words that go on those Thankful Thursday posts are exactly what they say, even if
Right.
there's typos or whatever in their
Yep.
review. Just like it is. And we try to highlight the humanness of our business. We always say to folks, there's no pressure, there's no
Right.
rush on our end. We meet
Right.
you where you are, and we mean it. We tell people all the time, not our house, not our money. We are
I
advocates.
can't tell you how many times I heard that. Not my
So,
I'd say, "What is your opinion?" And you'd say, "Not my house, not my money." And I'd say, "But"
and so many times Dan would say, I don't know why you're asking her. She's going to say, not my house, not my
Absolutely.
money. But
Absolutely.
we do give people the tools they need to make those
Yes.
decisions. We
Yes.
do tell you the benefits and the risks, and you listen, it's not our house and it's not our money, but you're
Mhm.
asking our opinion, and you're paying for our opinion, but we're not
Mhm.
going to put emotion and drama into it. We're going to
That's
give
right.
you the facts as we see them. Here's what you can do. Here's what happens if you do A, B, and C. The other thing that we tell people all the time is we firmly believe that whomever we're meant to work with, we will work with. And so we don't want to ever pressure people into hiring us. If
Right.
we're meant to work together, it will resonate. No
Right.
matter what your spiritual journey is, it will resonate. Do I know for a fact that there are people who've chosen not to work with us because they went on my Instagram feed and saw something that they didn't like?
Right.
Yes. But
Yeah.
I also have heard stories of other people not hiring other people because they went on their Instagram feed and saw that they ate at a restaurant they didn't like, or they drink and they don't like drinking, or they
Absolutely.
were showed their body half clothed. Like whatever.
Right.
You're gonna work with whoever lights up your soul. And
That's
that's
right.
not a word people use a lot, but that's how I phrase it. And not for nothing, I think that when you think about doing business with people, you want to do people business with people that you know, like, and trust.
Absolutely.
You sometimes don't know them right away, but you can get to know them,
Right.
and then you can build trust with them, and they can like you. And we can honestly say that the majority of our clients, and you're living proof of this, along with hundreds of others, strangers become our clients and
Absolutely.
clients become our friends. There
Yeah.
are probably less than two hands I could count on of people that we don't regularly keep in contact with on
Right.
like a friend basis, because it was truly just a business transaction.
Sure.
It was a death in a family. We took care of the probate matter for them selling the house, and they don't live here and they have no ties to the area, and they're
Right.
probably never coming back, but those
Right.
people still refer people to us.
When we sold our house in Connecticut, we were very comfortable with the realtor there. Again, I don't know, probably interviewed 6 or 7 people, and she was, again, the most honest, very similar in the vibe of, like, not my house, not my money, but also this is what would be in your best interest. And that was her heart, and she's a person who's since opened, a sober living facility in Connecticut and has such a beautiful community connection in what she's doing. She still does real estate, but her heart is in this, right? And so that is the similar, vibe and feel that I got from you. I was just like, this is a person I know that I will stay connected with forever in one way, shape, or form. And when we buy again, we clearly know who we're going to go with. I know that you and Adam are going to be like right there by our side, you know, holding our hand and not like pushing us, which, some people do is like, got to do it fast, grab something. It's the market's everything's flying off the shelves, whatever, that's not you guys at all. And I never felt that pressure. Um,
I
and I
think it's
appreciate that.
partly sorry, I think it's
No,
partly the teacher in me too.
right,
I spend a lot of time educating our clients,
right,
so they make fully informed decisions. And people always say, "How's the market? Should I sell right now? What's the market doing?"
right,
And this is my answer, and I literally mean it. I don't care what the market's doing.
right.
What do you need to do? What's going
That's
on in
right.
your life?
That's right.
Because if you need to sell, we don't care what the market's doing. We'll
That's right.
figure it out. If you need to buy, we don't care
We
what the
don't care.
market's doing.
We'll figure it out. That's right. Um, if you had to, describe what your soul sounds like today, how would you describe that?
I would say it sounds like standing in a huge open canyon and screaming out my heart song and hearing it come back to me in an echo.
Mm.
It's vast, it's wide, it's open, it's accepting, it's clear, it's resonating, it's grounded. And I don't know where all that came from. So yay me for the words.
Well, you know what? We talk about that intuition and that guide that's always in there. And isn't it lovely that when we don't have words, they still come through? And that's beautiful. And I love that. If you had a hope for what our listeners are taking away from this episode as we close? What would you hope that, that they got from this?
I would deeply hope that anyone who was in the church and left the church hurt, because back in the day when I would go out to bars and I'd party, man, you just pull up at the bar and it always turns to a church conversation. You would be surprised how many people. I used to say, you want to see the most hurt people in the world?
Mm,
Hurt people from churches are the most hurt and also the most angry. And I know because
right.
I'd lived that.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope deeply that anyone who was in the church and just felt so scarred and so hurt and so unaccepted would find a way to hear what their soul's song is and find some medium to unpack that so that you can return to the path that you're meant to be on, whether that lands you in a church
Right.
or a goddess circle or a nature preserve or
Mm-hmm.
your living room. I don't care, but
Mm-hmm.
just don't. I lived like 10 years with just anger and hurt from how I had experienced the church. And it's a deep, dark wound.
Right.
And it can cause you, it certainly caused me to be extremely judgy
Mm-hmm.
of people who would tell me about their church, and I'd be like, yeah, 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 I don't need to hear any of that. Been
Right.
there, done that. That is tainted and toxic, and I will
That's right.
pass. But it's not true. Not all churches. Listen, even yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Think about yoga. Think about some of the scandals of
Ah,
yoga. Even
yes.
yoga has its stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Everything can
Everything.
be corrupted.
That's right.
So I hope that the listeners that have that dark hurt and wound find this to be a salve over that, and maybe a heart opening moment where they can just soften the edges of that enough to let
Right.
some light in.
Right. Because as we heal from those wounds, that ripples out into the world. And that's all we're trying to do here as
Mhm.
humans. We just want to help us all, help the collective kind of walk in a beautiful way and in the best way as we live whatever years we have left in this human container. So I I just knew that this episode was going to be perfect in whatever it was supposed to be, and it never fails. That again, I come with questions, but it just was kind of perfectly and divinely guided. And so I want to thank Nikki for that.
Thank you for
Um,
having me on.
Oh my gosh, such an honor. But please take a moment. We're in, I don't even know now, 310 cities and 40 something countries, and that is beautiful and wild for me at the same time. But please go on Facebook and Instagram and find Nikki Lane and the 2 Lane team at Innovative Real Estate. Because yes, you may need a realtor, but also you're just going to find some very beautiful wisdom and love on their page. That's 2 Lane Real Estate, and that's Nikki and Adam Lane. And like she said, 2 lanes, one focus, all heart. That is their mantra for their business, but that is their mantra for their life. And I'm just grateful to be a small part of that. And as we close, I want to leave you with a few gentle questions that you might carry into this week or into this month. What part of you is growing right now? And how can you support that growth with patience and with non judgment? And what does your intuition feel like in your body? And what might it be asking you today? Um, Honor that. And maybe lastly, what is one small intentional choice that you can make that moves your life closer to who you want to be? Sit with one of those questions and just listen closely to what it's calling you to do and let it be a doorway back to what your soul can hear. Your soul already knows the way. You just have to stop and listen. Thank you for listening to the All in My Head podcast. and I'll meet you again next time.